Hello friends and neighbors. I recently got to see the BFG in movie theaters. Now before I begin this review, I want to point out that this is the last film that was written by Melissa Matheson. And you could say this review is in dedication to her and her family. Anyways, let's move on. The story of this film is about a young girl named Sophie, played by Ruby Barnhill, who lives in London, England, with a bunch of little girls in an orphanage. One night, she is taken by a giant, a big friendly giant, played by Mark Rylance, over to his home in Giant Country, where she finds out that while the big friendly giant is a kind soul who is more of a vegetarian, the other giants are flesh eaters, and they intend to eat all the little children of England. Pretty dark. So it's up to Sophie and the big friendly giants to work together to stop these giants with the help of the Queen of England. It's a pretty straightforward story, and it's reasonably well adapted from the Roald Dahl novel of the same name. So, what do I like about this film? Actually, there is a lot to like about it. Because since the whole story is very simple and straightforward, there are actually very few supporting characters. I mean, there are ones like the other giants in Giant Country, the Queen of England, her guards, etc., but the focus is naturally kept on our two leads, Sophie and the BFG. And thankfully, both of their performances are excellent. If their performances didn't work, the movie would go down with them. But Ruby Barnhill, despite this being her cinematic debut, does a great job as Sophie, and she's actually a very likable protagonist. She's brave, courageous, and has that Spielberg charm that you'd expect from child characters that are in his movies. But the showstopper and the scene stealer in pretty much this movie has to, of course, be Mark Rylance. I know it's basically common to say that Mark Rylance is an amazing actor, especially after his performance in Bridge of Spies, but the BFG himself is probably the best character in the entire film, as he was in the book. He's a big, friendly soul who feels like the best friend you wish you had. Protective, yet also very shy of the people around him and the other giants. He's a very likable character, and it's very heartwarming to see the bond between him and Sophie. The relationship between these characters really makes the film work. Not only that, but it is a very visually stunning film. And you can tell right from the beginning that the film has amazing special effects. Not just the ones from the giant himself, which, like I said, the performance of a motion capture actor is one thing, but when you actually capture the full range of an actor through their facial expressions, their movements, and through everything they do, that's true visual mastery. And the effects on the giants really do manage to be stunning, even by today's standards. As Rylance's face and emotions are shown to a T, as well as the other giants are in this movie. Not only that, but the dream world that the BFG and Sophie go into in the middle of the film is so visually stunning that I almost thought I stepped onto the set of Avatar 2, the James Cameron movie that's going to come out in a few years. It's that incredible. Not only that, but most of the humor of the film was actually very well handled. I mean, some of the jokes are sort of juvenile. You'll see what I mean if you actually see the movie, but most of them do manage to get a laugh out of me, including one particularly funny moment right before the climax, which I will not spoil for you, but let's just say it takes whiz-popping to a whole new level. Now, there are flaws with this film. For one, I feel that Spielberg's overly whimsicalness does get in the way of some of the scenes, almost as if Spielberg has reverted to some old cliches he had back in the day, which aren't as good as the cliches that make his film work. Not to mention, most of the side characters are really only given a few minutes of screen time before they're completely forgotten about. Like the Queen of England, only given a few minutes. Most of her guards, barely given any lines. The other giants, only one, the main one played by Jermaine Clement, is given any reasonable amounts of screen time. Not to mention the giants in this film, whereas they were scary in the original novel, they're played it more for comedy in this film. In fact, you'll notice that throughout the entire film, the tone of the original book and the tone of the movie are very different. The tone of the book had a lot of dark elements that really made the story feel like it had a lot of stakes. Here, it's more of a whimsical, family-friendly adventure where the darker elements are toned down. But I see what Spielberg was going for. He was going for more of a mass audience type of thing with this movie. So the fact that the darker elements have been toned down is mildly disappointing for me, but it's not like it's the worst thing in the world. So overall, this movie isn't as good as some of Spielberg's other films, but hey, even when it's a middle-of-the-road Spielberg film, you gotta say it's still a good film overall. It's just that Spielberg has such high standards for his movies that I can see that this really doesn't reach to his classics. But let's be fair to him. He's sticking to what he knows, and for what he does well in this film, he does very well overall. That's why I give the BFG a 7.5 out of 10. See you guys next week.